trying to, yeah, yeah, continue.
Did you hear that? Is it
Yeah,
yell at
yeah,
you?
it does
This
that.
meeting is being recorded.
I
Everybody
know,
pay
it wakes
attention.
me out.
Well, I haven't used it in a while. So when I first popped it on yesterday, I was like, whoa, what is going on?
Yes.
All right, guys. Hey, so this is Coach Bronson, and we are talking today with, who are we? What's your name again?
Rosemary
Something like
Fotheringham.
that? Rosemary.
Yeah.
That last name, every time I look at it, it like, wait a second. How do I say that again?
It just makes people panic. I totally get it. It's super long and I sound like a character off of Downton Abbey. So I just own it.
Is it bad that I've never watched that show?
You don't really need to. You just, with a name like Rosemary Fotheringham, you just imagine that I own an estate with lots of cattle. So
right, either that or Clue. Like you should be in the Clue movie.
Right.
Like that, right?
Yeah, definitely a murderer name. Something dodgy about Rosemary Fotheringham.
Or a novelist. That could be a novelist name.
Right. Yes.
Right? Have you written any books? Yeah. No.
I've actually written 3. So you're right. It's a good author name, kind of old Victoria, like a Agatha Christie, Rosemary Fotheringham, right? Maybe I could be a Poirot character, or yeah, definitely a murderer in one of
there we go.
books. Yeah. Definitely.
So what you actually are, though, is a
nutritional therapy practitioner.
I always get it backwards. Yes.
I know, it's such a mouthful,
FNTP,
right? So,
right? FNTP.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, functional nutritional therapy practitioner, and then I'm also a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So FNTP and FDNP, which I always joke kind of sounds like the Myers-Briggs types, like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
right? Yeah.
like I'm an ESFJ, like cool.
So what does that actually mean? So talk about that. So because I've talked to a couple people, I know you talked to you, and we got introduced to Jamie Brooks, who's an FNCP. Do you know Jonathan Shane, the Keto Road? He's kind of in the space.
Yeah.
He's out of Houston. He's an FNCP.
Okay.
Carnivore keto, same kind of space.
Right.
And so there's a bunch of people. It's kind of cool seeing this, I want to say, new classification of nutritionists, right? It's only, I don't know how old it is, but it's fairly new. It's not your traditional LDN or RD or whatever else.
Right.
That more of these people are coming in with a much more holistic, a much more different focus on what nutrition should be about. It's kind of like the difference in a regular doctor versus this new craze of functional medicine.
Yes. Right. Yeah, that's absolutely it. So the realm that I operate in, it's not a license. So I don't do any diagnosing or treating. My role is education and support. And so a lot of what we do is identifying where there might be some nutritional deficiencies and figuring out how we can add in the right whole foods and changes to diet and lifestyle so that those nutritional deficiencies can kind of be corrected. And the amazing thing is that the body just has this incredible innate ability to do a lot of wonderful healing. And so when we give the body the right building blocks it needs and we take out the things that are stressing it, it can really do, I know, novel concept, right? It can really do a lot of incredible healing on its own. So we're all just about removing the stressors and adding in the great nutrients and letting our wonderful innate intelligence do its thing.
So if we're not doing things that are harmful to our bodies won't be harmed.
Our bodies are really smart. Our bodies are really smart. We just need to, not throw too much at it in terms of stress.
Yeah.
And,
Okay. It's crazy. It's still, and I mean that's a direction of discussion that is always. It never ceases to amaze me how people seem to not make the connection, or how hard it is for people to make the connection between what they put in their mouth and how they feel, how healthy they are, how sick they are, like things like that. Like
I was there. Like I always thought the difference between people who got sick and didn't was just bad luck. I just kind of always assumed it was that way, and it wasn't until I was in my early 20s when I started to research this stuff. I mean, in retrospect, it seems so obvious, right? But at the time, I thought, how have I never heard this before? That like our bodies are really designed to eat this fuel and not this fuel. And that if we just change how we eat, we can dramatically reduce our risk of disease in the future. And to me, that was just such a revelation. It completely changed my perspective on it's just bad luck and there's nothing you can do about it, to, oh, I actually can have an active
An
participatory
active,
role
it
in,
actually, yeah.
right, in what, in my disease risk in the future. So that, I think, is just an incredibly empowering notion to have. It's certainly genetics, obviously that's a component of it, but there is so much on this epigenetic layer that can be modulated by how we
Sure,
eat and live. So
sure.
that, I think, is really wonderful news.
Okay, so you just said a word that most people probably aren't going to understand. So could you
Modulated,
explain,
yes.
yeah, could you
Sure.
explain
Yeah.
epigenetics
So
a little
I
bit?
like to I like to think of it as, well, I love this Chris Kresser quote that he says, epigenetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. So you have
Ooh, I love
genetics.
that.
This
I
is
love that.
this is the the sort of genetic code that you're born with. But epigenetics is this whole other layer on top of it that's affected by how you eat, your stress levels, your sleep, your exposure to toxins in the environment, and certain genes could be switched on or off depending on how you live. So
Right,
there's different estimations for what component is epigenetics and what component is genetics, but certainly there's a lot that we can do to
right,
influence
right.
how our genes are expressed. And
Isn't
another
it,
way I like, yeah,
that's,
go ahead.
I was going to say, that's the word I was going to say. So
Right.
basically you're saying is we may have a bunch of genes for different things, but they may
Mhm.
not be expressed until something triggers them.
Absolutely. Or they
Yes,
may
that's
never be
where,
expressed at all.
right,
You
right,
could have a gene for a certain disease, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it if your body, doesn't get the message to flip that switch.
right, right.
So I like to think of another way as, in terms of genetics and epigenetics, is like, maybe this is, I kind of think of like a soundboard where you have switches that can go all the way up to the top or all the way down to the bottom. And that's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of your range. Your set range is from like 0 to 10, or maybe it's over here, or maybe it's over here.
yeah.
But your lifestyle can shift where you are along that continuum.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay. I like that. So you are the soundboard and what you're capable of, but your lifestyle is what's kind of controlling where all that stuff
Certainly.
is. All right. Okay. Cool.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Like I'm never going to be 6 feet tall, but I could still adjust, I can adjust my body composition within my shorty little 5'4"
Right. Right.
body,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's an aspect that's genetics, but then I can modulate, my body composition within what genetics has dictated for me. So
Sure.
maybe
Sure.
that's a bit of a crude example, but it's
Yeah. No,
an
it makes sense.
example.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. I'm sure some people have heard epigenetics and be like, what is that? How's that different?
Yes.
So I got genetics and epigenetics and like, wait a minute.
Right,
I don't understand.
right. So think of genetics as kind of the core, but epigenetics is the layer on top of that.
Gotcha. Okay,
Mhm.
cool. So, all right. So tell us a little bit about you. What got you into wanting to learn about nutrition? What's happened in your life, things that you've learned, how you've applied things to your life and things like that. What's
Yeah.
changed? What's changed?
What's changed? Oh man, so much. I mean, I think I was, I was just kind of eating a very standard American diet when I went to college, and I always had digestive issues in childhood. It was just really, really painful and kind of debilitating, and
Yep.
I'd get really like
Been there.
nervous. Right, right. Like there's just a lot of emotions around it, man. A
Yep.
lot of like fear. I was afraid of what other people were going to think of me if I go on a car trip and I need to like go to the bathroom urgently. I was afraid of car trips.
Have you,
Like,
okay.
oh,
Let me ask you a
yes,
question. Have you
yes.
ever, I don't even know how to say this right. Have you ever, all right. So several years ago, I was on a bus trip I was in the National Guard. We were on a trip and we got on the bus. We were driving, I don't know, it was probably like a 3-hour drive. And within the first 30 minutes, I had people on the bus saying, we need to stop this bus so that man can go to the bathroom. Like
Oh,
I destroyed that bus, absolutely destroyed that bus. And they found a gas station. I got out and then it was like, it was one of those things where I got back on the bus. I'm like, okay, I'm good. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like,
yeah,
got to do it
right,
again. They're like,
right,
what is
totally.
wrong with you?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I'm
So
like, I don't know.
I didn't know that that wasn't normal. That was like my whole childhood.
Yep.
So then when I was in my 20s, I had, and gone to college kind of in my late teens, early 20s, and I gained the freshman 15, and my digestive issues were really bad, and my skin was bad. And periods were like the worst. And so I started to, I think I originally started, yeah, I just started to dabble with some of the like health and fitness stuff. And the more I read, the more I thought, how have I never heard this before? That like how we eat influences our health. To me, this is novel. And so I started to change things a little bit. I kind of
Sure.
came into it in like the paleo realm. So it was kind of that like 2009, 2010 when paleo was
Okay.
just starting to. So I went grain free and I cut out dairy, and that in itself just made a huge difference. It was like the clouds just parted. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
so good. Like I have mental clarity and I feel great. And like the weight was just kind of falling off effortlessly. It wasn't perfect, but it was just so much better than it was.
Mhm.
And that just really changed my perspective and I just dove into this. I love diving down a rabbit hole of learning. So I would just read any book I could get my hands on, listen to
Yeah.
all the podcasts. I get
Yeah.
real nerdy. And I just loved it. And so I think it was about 5 years later that I decided to go, do a certification in nutrition, because I thought, when I was so not well, I just thought this is how my life is going to be. And I didn't realize that there was hope.
Mhm.
And I thought there are other people who also don't know that there's hope. And I have to help them because they're where I was thinking this is just going to be my life. And so that, is so much of what has driven me, is knowing that there are these people out there that don't know there's hope and there is. And I want to help them. So I
Love
decided
that.
to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that certification. And then when COVID hit, and I was like, hey, let's take on a huge project. I did another certification, which would just kind of put another what do you call it? Another arrow
A
in your
feather,
quiver.
feather in
Yes.
your cap, whatever. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. That would allow my clients to do some self-testing in terms of like doing a, gut map and some other like hormone tests. So that was really exciting to me.
Yeah.
So I did that study, and I love, I'm always one of these like nerdy experimenters. So I've done everything. I've done gaps. I've done I'm doing AIP right now. I recently found out I was recently diagnosed with Hashimoto's, so thyroid autoimmune
Mhm.
disease. So I'm doing AIP. I've done carnivore. Before I started all this, I even did vegetarian just to like see if I could do it. I was like, nah, I don't like this. After 4 months, I was like, nah, giving
You
up.
made it four
Uh,
months. Wow. I don't think I
I
could make
did,
it a
I did.
week. I
Yeah,
don't
it
think
was
I could make it
funny.
a week.
Actually, a coworker and I were like, I wonder if we could do this, and just to see if we could.
Yeah.
And she quit after like 2 days. And I just, I'm very like determined, right? So I was like, I want to see if I can do this. And I
Yeah.
just stuck with it until I started getting really depressed. Now, looking back, I'm sure I was just super depleted of amino acids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I started eating protein again, and then I felt great. So
It's
anyway,
crazy. It's crazy what that protein stuff does to you, right?
I know,
Oh
wild.
my
Yeah, my body
gosh.
was like, yes. I started eating it again. So
That's my
anyway,
that's
where's
my
I going?
no, I was gonna say that's my big focus. I like to talk to people about
Yeah,
eating more protein and adding lean
sure.
mass. I don't talk about fat loss for the most part.
Yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
try not to, like, let's not focus on losing fat. Let's focus
sure.
on building yourself up and getting your
Yeah,
body functioning. And then
right.
that stuff will kind of take care of itself.
Right. Yeah. So I've done a whole bunch of things. I've done gaps for a while, and as you know, I did carnivore for
Mhm.
about 8 months, or 9 months, I think. And and they've all been great in their own way, and some have strengths and weaknesses, but
Sure.
I've really learned a lot. And I think overall, I'm just so much healthier than I was in my
Yeah.
early 20s, which for that I'm really grateful.
Yeah. What is your, and I'm curious to see what your answers to this. What are some of the things that you focus on from a style of eating when you're talking to people about what they should eat? What are some of the things that the concepts, method, I don't know what the right word is, principles that you follow when you say, hey, these are the things that we're considering when we talk about how to know if you're eating healthy or not?
Mm,
I have an answer
let me think about.
just to see if you say anything that's close to what I say.
Yeah,
I'm
can
totally
you?
setting you up for
The
this.
sound
With
cut
no
out for
lead
a.
up.
No,
Oh, I was going to say,
that's fine. That's fine. The sound did cut out a little bit. So
Okay.
could you just like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
got part of the
So,
question, but I
so
want to make sure
what are
that I
some of
really
the
get into.
things? Yeah, what are some of the things that when you think about, let's just say how human beings should eat? What is the healthiest way for human
Right.
beings to eat? What are some of the considerations that you look at outside of specific dogmatic labels? Like, what are
Yeah.
the things that you look at when we talk about, what does it mean to eat healthy?
Right. Yeah. Well, this is one of those areas that in the past I have been, I've been very tempted by the like dogmatic view of this is the right way for everyone forever. And that's something I've really changed my mind on. I don't think that is true.
Yeah.
Bio individuality, right? Like each person's body is completely different. Your genetics are different, where you're at in your life, your age, your lifestyle, your gut situation, your current gut flora. I really think that it is very, very bio individual. So I don't think that what works for one person is right for another person. And what worked for you 10 years ago might not work for you now because
Hmm.
you're at a different age. Your gut flora is always changing in a different environment, right? It's that
Yeah.
epigenetics. So, but I think, it's a very nuanced thing because I can't make any claims about everything being right
Sure.
for everyone all the time. But certainly, I think some of the consistent things obviously are like taking out the refined food that was just not part of our evolution. So the amount of time that we've had since, the introduction of refined food with like the industrial food, uh, industrial food complex that kind of
Yep.
came about after World War II. I mean, that's just a blip in evolutionary terms. Our bodies are really not evolved to expect a
Right.
lot of the kind of franken foods, the heavily processed foods that we're eating now. I mean, maybe if we had enough time, evolutionarily speaking, we might adapt. But the reality is that we're not there yet. So I think eating in a way that is just a little bit more aligned with what our genetics expect is
Hmm.
hugely important there.
Okay. Yeah, cutting out the bad stuff, right? Like we said, if you
Yeah.
don't do things that are bad, your body will probably not react badly either.
Yes, and I think it is, it does take experimentation,
Hmm.
and that could be a frustrating process,
Right.
but once you get something that feels right and it just kind of clicks and your body's like, oh yes, I'm in the groove. I like this.
Right. Right.
It feels so good. You feel great, and so I think that tinkering is definitely worth it.
Yeah. So you deal with clients coming from all kinds of backgrounds, I'm assuming.
Mhm.
They've tried different things. They've had some success. They haven't had any success, whatever. They got different goals, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Um, what do you do and how do you work with people to help them maintain and sustain, getting started, learning new
Mhm.
stuff, challenging themselves? Uh, there's so many different challenges that come along with this ride.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you help people maintain? What's your methodology for that?
Yeah, and so kind of the continued motivation and keeping it up over long periods
Yeah,
of
yeah,
time.
motivation, techniques,
Right.
tactics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that can go into that. So it's kind of a wide open.
Yeah. You're so right. Like the habit change is such a huge component of this. And this is one thing I've been thinking about a lot recently. Our human tendency to not want to let go of certain habits or even certain addictions.
Yep.
And uh, yeah, this is something I've thought a lot about. There are a few frameworks that I have found really helpful because once you know kind of how your brain works and how you see the world, you can
Mhm.
adapt your strategies to suit yourself so that you can continue these habits that you want to keep.
Yep.
So, one technique I found really powerful, or one kind of framework that I found really powerful, is Gretchen Rubin's Four Tendencies. I don't know if you've really read.
A little
Um,
bit. I don't know a lot. I've heard about
okay,
some of it, but I don't know too much about it.
right, right. So she's an author that writes about has written a lot about happiness and habit change. And she came up with this framework called the Four Tendencies. So
Hmm.
it's kind of these four personality types that differ on how they respond to expectation. So both internal and external expectation. So internal expectation could be
Hmm.
like, I'm going to get up and go for a run every day this week. Whereas external expectation could be like a work deadline or something that your partner's asked you to do.
Yeah.
And each of these types differ on how they respond to internal and external expectations. So you have the upholder. So as their name suggests, they uphold both internal and external expectation. They'll just check those boxes. You give them something to do, they'll do it. And they also, they set a New Year's resolution. They have no problem accomplishing it. Then you have questioners. So these people will do something if it makes sense to them, if it's internally coherent with how they see the world. Yeah, right. So if that doesn't make sense to them, they're going to be like, "That's stupid. I'm not doing that." Questioners love that.
I have never said
Right.
that. Never
Yeah.
once.
Questioners love the phrase, yeah, that's stupid. If so, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. Classic questioner, classic questioner. And then you have obliger. So this is a really interesting tendency. A lot of people are obligers where it's easy for them to complete things for other people. If they have accountability, they can get it done. But if it's just something that they decide to do for themselves, it's really hard to like get that done. And then you have
Huh.
rebels who resist both inner and outer expectation. So if somebody tells them to do something, it's like, don't tell me how to live my life. And if there's something that the rebel feels like they should do, but deep down don't really want to do, they're going to resist it too. But once the rebel really wants to do something, she's unstoppable. So if somebody's like, you can't do that, or I don't think that that's possible for you, the rebel's like, watch me. So, part of that was the 4 months of being
Okay.
vegetarian. Like
Right.
I was, no, I want to do this. So I just did it for 4 months. And then now I don't feel like doing this anymore. So then I stopped. Um, so it's really key to know which you are. So applying this framework to keeping on track with health or fitness or anything like that. If you're an upholder, you're probably already doing just fine. You've decided to, do your infrared sauna once a week and go for a run and eat keto, and you probably have no problem upholding that. If you're a questioner, you are going to need to keep up on reading the science and the data, because that's going to motivate you. You'll go, oh yes, that makes sense. I could see this, this scientific study says these things, and so that makes sense to me.
Yep.
Essentially, the questioner is taking external expectation and making it internal, and if it doesn't make sense to them, they're going to reject that. For the obliger, accountability, so key. So making sure you have a running buddy or a workout buddy or somebody to do your carnivore with and checking in. Hey, how's it going? And knowing that that person's going to be checking in, that is super key. And then for the rebel, it gets interesting, because for the rebel, they're very motivated by their own identity. So for a rebel might say, this is how Gretchen Rubin describes it, is a rebel might say something like, I'm a really vibrant and energetic person. And I haven't been feeling that way lately. I haven't been
Mhm.
feeling myself. So I'm going to start doing X, Y, and Z so that I can start getting back to feeling the way that I know that I am. That is super motivating.
Gotcha.
Or also, if, rebels, I've seen this for myself and with other rebels too. Other rebels, you might be interested in trying a way of eating or a sort of fitness regimen that is kind of different from how most people do. So maybe you might go like, oh, yoga, that's like too mainstream, but I will maybe try the aerial silks, flying and,
Gotcha. Yep.
the
Yep.
aerial yoga or that sort of thing.
Goat yoga.
Rebels, goat yoga, yes. Rebels just really delight in like, everybody's going this way, I'm going to go this way. So,
Now, can
yeah.
people be layers or levels of both, of different ones?
Yeah, yes. So you are one thing primarily, but you can kind of tip to one or the other. So
Okay.
I am a rebel, but I kind of tip to questioner. So I have questioner tendencies.
I was just thinking, I feel like I'm
Yeah,
a questioner with a little bit of rebel.
absolutely. Yeah. And my husband is a questioner who tips to rebel. So we'll
You
often
guys are a
make the
good
same
match.
decision. We are a great match. Yeah. We'll often make the same decision, but it's kind of for different reasons. So like, I'm going to make this decision, for him, I'm going to make this decision because that makes sense to me. And I've read the science and the data. And yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to make that decision because this is what I want to do. And those other people can't tell me how to live my life. So, we might come to the same conclusion, but it's ultimately different motivation. So that's why it's so key to know what your type is, because you can adjust your approach to
Right.
suit your own tendency.
Now, it's crazy you're talking about this, because we're talking about habits and sustaining a healthy lifestyle, but
Mhm.
I can see so much overlap in other aspects.
Absolutely.
of human interaction, social
Yeah.
interaction, interpersonal interaction. Um, uh, the without getting too much into it, but as you're talking about coming to the same decisions for different reasons,
Mm,
the thing that came to my head was this whole the whole debate over how the response to COVID was, right? Wear
right.
masks, don't wear masks. Like, and you can
Right.
see where people may stand on one of those four tendencies
Mhm.
based on the decisions that they've made.
Totally.
And you can kind of
Yes.
backwards look at that and go, okay, they made this. This is why they said they made that decision. Now I can
Yeah.
see what their tendency is. That's
Right.
crazy. That's
Right.
crazy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you could see how upholders would be like, okay, here's the CDC guidelines. Here's what I'm going to do.
Right.
Questioners, maybe same thing. They would research, and whichever way they researched and
But
whatever conclusion they
but if
came
they're a
to,
questioner and a little bit of rebel, they may
yes.
say, screw the CDC. They can't tell me what to do. And I think the
Well,
science says this, right? So
right. So this is an interesting thing. The rebel, they're not necessarily rebelling for rebellion's sake. They are just they'll do whatever whatever they want to do. So for a rebel, it's like, all right, here's the recommendations, and like that I want to go along with that. I'm the
right,
type of person
right.
who does X, Y, and Z, therefore I'm going to do it. Other rebels, they for them and their values, they're, wearing their mask like down here or whatever, because they're like, nobody's gonna tell me how to live my life, right?
One
So
side down, all crooked.
yes. But yes, so
Interesting.
those tendencies, they influence everything that you do. It's not just habits and food and fitness, but how
Right.
you interact with people. Knowing your friends' tendencies, knowing your coworkers' tendencies. I think this is a framework that anybody who has to interact with other humans should learn, because
Awesome.
it's just like an incredible life hack.
Right.
If
And
I
you
can
include,
jump, yeah,
yes, you include some of that stuff in with your clients when you're working with clients, identifying
absolutely.
where they're at and kind of giving them some
Absolutely.
tactics they can use to.
Yes. Yeah. So Gretchen Rubin has a quiz that you can do to take
Okay.
the four tendencies quiz on her website. And as part of intake, I have people take that quiz.
Oh,
I
nice. Okay.
also, yeah, I also have them take a chronotype quiz. So chronotype is like our biological preference for sleep time, wake time, everything in between.
Okay.
And so I want to see whether they're a early morning lion, or they're late hours wolf, or they're somewhere in between, like a bear, the daylight hours, or a dolphin, who's kind of like the um uh you know like dolphins always sleep with like one part of their brain open, so the dolphin is kind of always awake a little bit. And yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so yeah, I have them do a few of these because I just want to understand their motivations, and also their biological preference for sleep and wake time.
Sure.
And once I know kind of how they see the world, then I can tailor my approach to
Yeah.
suit them.
That's awesome.
Because it does nobody know any good to assume that everybody sees the world the way I do.
Right. Right.
Um,
And that's cool
mhm.
because you're talking about we're talking about when you work with somebody, it's not just okay, what are you eating? Send me your food log and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong and what you need to change.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right.
It's
Right.
okay, that's great information and they need to know that at some level, but they also
Hmm.
need to understand how they can actually do that in a way that fits their lifestyle. They can maintain a
Hmm.
routine and keep doing it for the rest
Hmm.
of their life, not
Hmm.
just, like, yeah, that's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for the rebel, for example, or for the obliger, I might say, okay, I'm gonna have you send me a food log once a week, and I
Mhm.
want you to track, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, and I'll check your food log. And so for them, they really need that accountability.
Right.
Whereas for the rebel, they're gonna resist that. But the way that I might approach them is, um, kind of say something along the lines of, well, you really got a good thing going the way you're eating. You enjoy being able to eat that way with your family, have whatever you want at social occasions, and I'm not sure you should make any changes, because it just seems like you're really happy and getting a lot of satisfaction. And then they can kind of, well, yeah, but like I don't feel great. And so they start to convince me why they want to make these changes, and in the process they're
They
convincing
they
themselves. So
internalize it. Yeah.
yes, yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of this sitting with open hands. So I suggest I sort of become the voice of their resistance and suggest, here's all the reasons why you shouldn't change. And in doing that, then they have an opportunity to say, yes, all those things are true, but I'm not feeling great. And so I want to make some changes instead of saying, here's what I recommend that you do. And then rebel, yeah, but like, I like being able to eat whatever I want at family occasions. I
Right. You
like the
just
occasional
switched
drink,
the
totally.
interesting.
Right. So
You're so
by,
sneaky. You're so
oh, so
sneaky.
sneaky. I am a rebel, so I know how to talk to them. um and yeah, and actually this is another really crucial point about the rebels, but this,
Yeah.
I think this is, no adult likes to be told what to do. I don't think any human likes to be told what
No.
to do.
No.
So a way to, if you are a coach, a really great tactic that I learned from Gretchen Rubin that especially works for rebels, but I think is great for anybody, is information, consequences, choice. So kind of, here's option one, here's option two, here's the consequences of option one, here's the consequences of option two, but you're an adult, you can make your own decisions. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
push you, either way.
Yep.
But you make a decision, and if you decide to do this option where we try to get you a little healthier and figure out what we can do to support your body to do that, then great. And if that's not right for you and you want to keep doing what you're doing, great too. Like, I
Yeah.
support that. And maybe it's just not the right time for us to work together, and
Right.
that's completely up to you. So giving that choice, I think, to people is really huge.
And what's your why? It goes back to, why are you here? What are you trying to get
Yes.
to?
Hmm.
And there's no wrong choice. It's you.
Hmm.
It's your decision. It's your body.
Right.
It's your life.
Hmm.
This is where I think these things will take you. If you
Right.
choose A, B, or C, have a blast.
Yes.
If you don't like where
Absolutely.
A brought you, then come on back and we'll talk about B. If you don't, and
Yes.
it's it's a process. You've got your whole life. It's not like you're missing out or you're losing a lot if you try something and it doesn't work. You
Right.
learned what doesn't work, so now you're
Yes.
further ahead along the process than if
Hmm.
you didn't do anything at all. So,
Right.
you know,
Right. And
take a swing.
a second framework in addition to the four tendencies, but just another exercise that I think is really helpful, especially
Sure.
for the rebels, but really anybody, is write down the pros and cons of your option one and your option two. So keep eating the way I'm eating, or change to start eating autoimmune protocol, right? So like, I did this with myself recently.
Yeah.
Okay, pros of option A, continue eating the way I'm eating. Well, I get to basically eat whatever I want whenever I want. I get to have fun, have wine, like, really list all of those things.
Sure.
And then, okay, but the cons of that, like, well, hangovers suck real bad. And, and I don't feel great, and my skin's a certain way,
Mhm.
and write those down. All right, what's the pros of eating AIP? Well, I'll probably feel a lot better. My body composition will get to where I want it to be, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but there's cons. There's a cost to this. So it's going to be harder at social gatherings. I'm going to have to be more proactive to bring my own food. I won't be able to, like, for a period of time, have like a glass of wine with my husband at our favorite wine bar. Okay, those are real costs. And then you need to weigh up what are the pros and cons of each of these options.
Okay.
If the pros are higher than the cons, then okay, maybe this is something I want to do. If it's about 50-50, maybe it's up in the air. But honestly, I would tell my clients, if the cons are higher, then maybe this isn't the right decision for you right now.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's worth it to you to keep eating the way you are, and you have a little suffering. But most people, kind of, once they have a clear picture of the pros and the cons, and not just that hidden resistance of like, I have to give up like my
Yeah.
wine with my husband,
Well,
and it's a
yeah,
lot of work. And
then there's also, to take it another step deeper, is when you look at those pros and cons, that's where you can also have a discussion on what's the motivation. Why do you think this is good? Why do
yeah,
you think this is bad?
right,
Right? Why
right,
is it a con that you can't have a glass of wine? Let's dig
right,
into that. Let's dig into that a little bit.
yeah.
Like, why can't you have a social engagement or social gathering
Hmm.
without wine?
Right,
So
exactly,
so
yeah.
that
So
so we can go to a
questioning
whole
those
different level
assumptions.
of, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that, it's because there is, in any significant change in what you're eating, I think it is not helpful to not recognize that there's a grief process,
Yeah.
because people are going to resist otherwise. So I think calling a spade, and this is going to be hard at times. You're probably going to cry at some point about how you, like, can't have the things that you have. You're an adult. You can make your own decision. That's why I want you to do this pros and cons list so that you actually have an accurate picture of the cost, because there is a cost to this.
Right.
But,
Right.
in my experience, it's worth it. I believe it will be worth it to you, but you need to know that there is a cost in doing
Yeah.
this.
There's a change in mindset, and I've been posting about this recently. I've seen a lot in the last several months on social media groups and people that I've talked to. I feel like I feel like it's gotten worse in and it probably has, because the longer keto goes, the more people try to capitalize on that phrase. So
Hmm.
the merchandise, the snack food, the processed
Hmm.
food, the crap that's out there that they put,
Hmm.
it's keto approved, it's a keto, it's low this, it's low that,
Yes.
it's still processed crap.
Right.
But people are so hooked on trying to ketoize everything that they eat
Hmm.
that people are getting stuck in the process of changing the food that they eat
Hmm.
without changing their mindset around the food that they eat.
Right. Yeah.
So
And then when
they're
paleo
not
is,
changing at all. They're not growing,
yes,
changing. They're not changing their
correct.
mindset of what health actually is, what
Yep.
their quality of life could be. They're just saying, "Oh, well, if I do this, that means I'm healthy," even though there's no
Yep.
change in their body necessarily. There's no
Right.
change in their mindset. That it's just they're just stuck in this thing. You can't replace your food and then say now all of a sudden you've changed everything in your life. It just doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're so right. It's both. You got to change your food, but you also have to change your mindset, because if you're just having keto versions of all the same stuff you've eaten, you're kind of missing the point. When paleo was first coming out, I
Right.
loved this phrase that they would call it, if you're just making like paleo treats of everything, they called it sex with your pants on. So it's
Yes.
like,
Yes.
it's like,
Right.
I mean, you're still kind of like,
Right.
um, so yes, I think that is where that's a symptom of not recognizing that there's a cost and being willing to pay that
Right.
cost for
You're trying to
incredible
make
health.
change. Yeah, you're trying to make changes with the least amount of
Hmm.
disruption as
Right.
possible.
Yeah, and there's
And
necessarily going
it
to be
doesn't work.
disruption if you
It's got to
change,
be
if
there.
you're going to, right, exactly. So, and so, yeah, yeah, we've all been there, right? That sometimes you need a little bit of a transition food to
Mhm.
get you over the hump. But ideally, the goal is to start eating more of the real whole foods, and cooking more from home.
Right.
So I don't, we've all been there. I don't begrudge anyone using some of those foods for a long term, but I certainly wouldn't want people to be kind of eating exclusively those foods and thinking this is healthy, and
Yeah.
now my body's going to be just fine.
Spending all the, and this is what I see a lot, is people
Hmm.
spend an inordinate amount of time and energy trying to find. It's like, I've been searching for 5 days on this one recipe for cheesecake that's keto. Can anybody help me? I'm
Right.
like, why? Like,
Yeah.
just chalk it up to a loss. It's yeah. So I understand where that comes from and I sympathize.
Totally.
It's just, I think for me, it gets frustrating because I want to help every single one of those people and say, just
Hmm.
like shake them a little bit. So no,
Hmm.
you can do
Hmm.
better.
Hmm. But see, that's where that sitting with open hands is so powerful. It's kind of like, I'm not sure that you maybe want to change. Maybe you shouldn't, because
Right.
it seems like these certain treaty foods are really important to you. And so maybe we're just trying to force something that isn't going to work. Maybe you actually kind of want to go back to those treaty foods, and then
Right.
allow them to say, well, no, because like I'm still not feeling good.
Right.
So I do actually want to make some changes. Okay, great. We can
Right.
work with that. But I think it's really important to become the voice of their resistance to allow them to change, because force this way is going to be met with force this way. But if it's
Yeah,
kind of a,
absolutely.
hey, I don't know if this is right for you. Maybe you just want to go back to the way that you were eating before. It allows them to either go, yeah, you're right. I'm not ready for this, or no, you're right. I need to double down and recommit. And like I've been
Yes.
doing
See,
too much sex with my pants on.
yeah, for me, I feel like the challenge would be being able to approach things that way without being sarcastic.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
Do it
It
in a
takes
loving and
empathy. It
caring
does.
fashion and not be sarcastic about
Absolutely.
it.
Right. Absolutely. Saying,
That's just because I'm sarcastic in general.
no, it's totally fine. It does, and there is absolutely a place for humor in this,
Yeah,
right? But it does take that level of empathy, and sort of letting your own ego die a little bit, the need to
sure.
help, the need to fix, and just kind of offering that, I'm not sure that this is the right answer for you right now. I'm
Mhm.
not sure that maybe that it seems like you're getting a lot of value out of eating the way that
Yep.
you used to eat. And so maybe this isn't just right for you. I could be
Right.
totally off base. Tell me if I'm off base, but just what I'm observing.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the cool thing about that is it's 100% true.
Right.
It's not, you're not talking about using a tactic or a technique to specifically be, used as reverse psychology. You're actually stating a true fact
Right.
because they are assigning value. They are saying and
Yeah.
showing that they are getting something out of it. That's
Right.
why it's hard for them to make the change.
Absolutely. That's why it's
So
hard
it's
for
not like
anyone
you're
to make the
making that
change.
up. It's like, yes, you are seeing value.
Hmm.
Did you
Hmm.
did you realize that you were putting that much value on this?
Right.
And then that's what you need to evaluate. You're making them aware of, hey, this is what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's that. And again, that's why that pros and cons of option A and option B
Yeah.
is so huge. Having them do that as an exercise and say, I want you to write down everything good that you're getting out of, you know, uh, continuing to eat this way. All
Right.
right, you can have whatever you want, and social occasions are fun, and those are very real things, and they show wonderful things about the person that they love.
Yeah.
Social occasions, it's important to them to have friends and family, like have fun with friends and family. Those are all wonderful things. And once you look at the good side of their resistance to let go, paradoxically, it's easier for them to actually let go.
Right. Cool. Awesome. This is fantastic. I think people will really get a lot out of this. Um, some other couple questions. You did carnivore for a while. You're going to
Yeah.
AIP.
Yes.
How that's a very restrictive diet.
Yeah.
Um, how do you do those without getting bored with what you're eating?
Oh man, AIP is, for me, doing carnivore for so long, like
AIP
AIP
is like, oh my
seems,
God.
oh my gosh, I could have so much. I will say it's a in some ways it's almost harder because um there another framework we haven't talked about, but this is another Gretchen Rubin one, is this idea of an abstainer and a moderator.
Okay,
So
I was hoping you
okay,
came up with that.
yes,
Okay, good,
right.
good, good, good.
So abstainers, you'll know which one you are. She says this, you'll know which one you are if I ask you the question, can you have just one square of chocolate in a chocolate bar? So moderators are like, I want some, their resolve is strengthened when they can have just a little bit of something and they're satisfied. And for the abstainer, their resolve is actually strengthened by not even having it as an option. So a moderator can just have one square of chocolate, be like, good, I'm satisfied. I don't feel deprived. I'm just fine. Whereas
Right.
the abstainer is like, every bar of chocolate is single serve. If it's up there in the cupboard, it's going to be calling my name and I can't rest until I've eaten the entire thing. Right. So for me, being an abstainer, in a very moderator world, the
Yeah.
nutrition realm is very moderator dominated. So
Yep.
everything in moderation, you still got to live, 80/20 approach. It sounds crazy and stringent to take an abstainer approach where it's just like, I don't do that. But actually, for an abstainer, it's like the ultimate freedom because it's no longer weighing on you about, okay, is today the 20%? And like, how much do I have? And, the continual mental battle is just like, oh, I just don't eat that. And it's way easier. You don't have
Yeah.
to think
Yeah.
about it at all. So for me, that was one thing that made carnivore just this incredible simplicity. It was like, oh, those other things aren't an option. So I just don't even think about them. So I don't obsess about food anymore. I just
Yep.
eat these things. I don't eat these things. It's like the ultimate freedom. So AIP has its own complexities because it is yes, it's way more restrictive than standard American diet, but
Yeah.
you can still fall into all the same traps that I could with paleo or keto or whatever, which is like AIP treats, AIP snickerdoodles, AIP ice cream, AIP. So for an abstainer, that's really hard to be like, oh, I can have this. It falls within my framework, so like I should
Hmm.
definitely make these. Um, so so in some ways, AIP is harder for me as an abstainer. I don't think it necessarily would be for everyone. If you're a moderator, you can
Right.
probably do just fine. Um, but yeah, that has been an interesting, surprising struggle. Oh, I will say, with keto, when I was doing that, that was harder to moderate because pretty much everywhere you go, any restaurant or any, cafe, little treats, you could usually find something you can have. But with
Right.
AIP, I'm pretty much cooking everything myself. So in that sense, it kind of is easier to abstain because it's
Right.
like it's
Because you're
very
not going to go out and
unlikely.
get, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very unlikely I'm going to be able to find something off plan outside of my house unless I make it.
Okay. Um,
Um,
what, yeah, we didn't go over that one. Um, okay. Talk to me about what you recommend people do for fitness. So I'm the fitness guy,
mm,
right? And we
mhm.
haven't talked about fitness at all, but you have clients, and when you talk to them, what are some of the things you recommend from a fitness perspective, um, for their lifestyle routines, changes, things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I really love Tim Ferriss's uh, notion that the imperfect plan that you stick to is better than the perfect plan that you don't. So, and also on top of that would be James Clear's idea that it's about the habit of the habit rather than the habit itself.
Yep.
So much of staying on track is just keeping that habit of the habit, even if you're doing just this ridiculously small amount first. Establish the habit first and then start to do the activity. So
Yep.
in Atomic Habits that James Clear wrote, he gives the example of, just getting ready, putting on your clothes, your gym clothes, going to the gym,
Yep.
be there 5 minutes, and then come home. Come home. It
Yep.
seems ridiculous. It seems ridiculous, but what you're actually doing is two parts of a habit there. So you're establishing the habit and then you add doing the fitness on top of it. So once you get that putting the clothes on and going to the gym down, then
Hmm.
you add the other layer.
That's awesome.
So I'd say start with just the smallest part of the habit, so small that it seems ridiculous. But once you have that down, then you can add in the other things. Um, I think another key component, one thing that I've changed my mind on is that not every fitness thing works for everybody all the time.
Mhm.
So um I'm not sure how familiar you are with the idea of like the ectomorph, the mesomorph, and the
Mhm.
endomorph. Okay, so you have, so the endomorph are the more like muscly, short, broad. They are really drawn to and good at things like, so the Olympic powerlifting,
Mhm.
weightlifting. Whereas the ectomorph, tall, skinny, always kind of on the move and,
Mhm.
fidgety, needs to like go for a run to get their wiggles out. And that, they're really drawn to like cardio and running and that sort of thing. And then you have the mesomorph who's kind of somewhere in the middle. And you would think, well, ectomorph is great at running, so like that's what they should do. I actually asked Andrea Wool about this. She does autoimmune, kind of exercise programs
Sure.
for
Sure.
people who are autoimmune. I asked her, is that, should you go with what you're inclined to do? If you're an ectomorph, like run. If you're the endomorph, do that powerlifting. And she said, actually, you should try to be more well-rounded. So the endomorph can actually benefit from doing some running. The ectomorph might benefit from doing some weightlifting. And it's like exactly the thing that you don't want to do, which is
Mhm.
probably why it's a good idea for
Sure.
you to do. So that's just an interesting concept that I've been sort of noodling on
Yeah, yeah,
is
we can talk about that anytime you want. I can talk about this stuff all day.
oh yeah.
It's actually there's a core set of concepts from a fitness perspective that um, we all that we all need work in, right? The 10
Mhm.
components of fitness, and there's different aspects that your body type may be more prone to one or two of those, but that doesn't mean it doesn't need work, number one. And number two, that means you still got the other seven or eight or nine that you still have
Right.
to work on. So
Right.
body type makes a difference more in proclivity, not need.
Yes. Yes.
So that's
That's
what I think
exactly right.
a lot of people miss. So like, well, I should be able to do this, better because of that. Okay, that's great. So you're more, you have a more uh, ability to perform in that area, but that doesn't mean you don't have to do the other areas as well.
Mhm, mhm.
For
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. And I just want in one other thing to add to sort of my perspective of fitness is that I really love the sort of functional fitness approach.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Katie Bowman, but her
No,
kind of
I'm not.
like it's sort of natural whole body movement. So
Okay, sure.
I love the way she describes different movements or different loads as kind of nutrients. So if you're getting like only vitamin A all the time,
Yeah,
it's not going to be healthy and you're going to be imbalanced. If you're only doing bicep curls all the time, it's going to be imbalanced. And so
absolutely.
she really emphasizes kind of whole body movements and getting a whole variety of loads of the body, different positions and different
Yep.
loads that you're carrying. I really love, she has a great video on YouTube that shows her working at her dynamic workstation. So she'll stand for a little bit, squat for a little bit, sit with like a leg out, and kind of always moving as she works. And
Awesome. Okay.
so things like squats and hanging and climbing and pushing and pulling and digging
Yes.
and all these like natural um, natural movements. Another person whose philosophy I really love is Daryl Edwards, who talks about like the animal moves and how movement
Yep.
needs to be fun. If you're going to do it consistently, it's got to be fun. So I love that approach too, because if fun gets done, right? If it's not
Yep.
fun, like
Yep.
you're going to
Absolutely.
fall off.
Absolutely.
So those are just a few things that have been influential to kind of shape my perspective of
No, it's
fitness.
fantastic. Everything you said, it falls within the same stuff that I work on and
Mhm,
that I do. So that's fantastic.
mhm.
I don't have to argue with you about anything.
Everyone should be doing only push-ups all the time ever. Okay, argue with me.
Squats are bad for your knees.
Mm.
Um, all right, cool. Do you have anything you want to add or throw in? Any words of wisdom you want to leave with our
Mm.
watchers or viewers?
Mhm.
It's been so much good stuff already. I'm not sure you can add to what you've already given us.
That's very kind of you. I think I think what I would tell people is it's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the research that you do and the things that you feel like you should be doing.
Yeah,
And my advice would be just start. You're not going to be perfect on day one. It feels really overwhelming, but if you just kind of incrementally get 1% better each week, in months and years, that is going to compound, and you're just going to find yourself at this way different place. So don't look ahead to how far you need to go. Just focus on doing that little incremental bit by bit. And perfection is not what we're striving for.
yep,
So just focus on getting that little 1% better, and over time
right.
that's really going to add up.
Yeah, improvement is better than perfection every day.
Right.
Yeah,
And perfection is a lie anyway.
right,
It's a
right,
very persistent
right.
there is no perfection. It doesn't exist in this world. Anything can be improved. So
Yeah,
perfection is not the right ideal to strive for. It's, imagine your health on a scale of 0 to 100. It's never going to be 100. It's not going to be 0 either until you're dead. Happens to everyone, but not quite yet, hopefully. And so it's just about sliding yourself on that spectrum rather than this all or nothing thinking, like either my health is 100% perfect or it's effed,
right.
so letting go of that all or nothing thinking and just, okay, how can I get myself from like a 64 on the scale to a
Yeah,
65 this week?
yep. Awesome,
Hmm.
awesome. Cool. Well, thank you very much. Where can people find you? You have a website. So you were just telling me before that you're not on social media as much anymore. So how
Yes.
do people get a hold of you?
Yes, no, I still have my website, Real Food Carnivore. So I
Okay.
have a quick start guide to carnivore guide that I've written on there, which is a whole PDF downloadable with a bunch of resources and shopping lists and meal
Okay.
plans for anybody that is just wanting to start out with carnivore, but wants to avoid some of the main pitfalls. And oh, what do I do if like now I'm having diarrhea, or now, what do I do about this? It's
Right.
all in there. So I wrote
Okay.
that because this is kind of what I wanted for myself when I started.
Sure.
Um, yeah, and I also have a contact form on there if people want to email me. But yes, as you said, have been weaning myself off of social media, which has been fabulous. I've never felt better. So great. I love it. Highly recommend.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you
Yeah.
coming on, and I definitely want to have you on here again sometime soon.
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. This has been
You
really
bet.
great talking to you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bronson. Bye bye.
All right. Did it stop?